Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. A helicopter crash near Fort Good Hope on Friday claimed the life of the pilot. Tom Frith was battling a wildfire near the community when his helicopter went down. As the CBC's Luke Carroll reports, Frith is being remembered as a loving family man and a courageous pilot.
A big smile and a big heart. Tom Frith loved to fly. And when called upon, he jumped into action to fight the Fort Good Hope fire. Late this afternoon, Great Slave Helicopters posted about his passing, saying he was a dedicated pilot who left behind a beautiful young family. Condolences were also expressed by NWT Fire. The cause of Frith's death is being investigated by the Transportation and Safety Board. Investigators arrived in Fort Good Hope on Sunday and have been interviewing Great Slave Helicopters. John Cox is an American-based aviation safety consultant. He doesn't work for the TSB, but he has experience with these types of investigations.
Investigators are certainly going to look at pretty much everything. And that means the maintenance history of the aircraft, the pilot training history, and they'll talk with other pilots that have flown with that individual. They'll also look at the environment. What was the fire doing? What were other crews that were fighting the same fire at the same time? What were they experiencing? And then they'll also look for eyewitnesses.
Cox says collecting all that information is why these investigations can take a while. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
While that investigation unfolds, the fire near Fort Good Hope continues to burn. It's now more than 8,000 hectares. NWT Fire says major winds are in the forecast for the community tomorrow. Winds that could continue to push the fire away from Fort Good Hope. They're expecting westerly winds with gusts of 50 to 60 kilometers an hour, though NWT Fire says there is a chance those gusts could reach 75 kilometers. While winds from that direction would push the fire away from Fort Good Hope, they could also add fuel to that wildfire. NWT Fire says that's why crews are focused on reinforcing their control lines and cold trailing, a technique where firefighters check for heat coming from the ground with their bare hands. NWT Fire also warns that Fort Good Hope and Norman Wells are likely to see smoke, but says that smoke is actually coming from fires in the Yukon and British Columbia. Further south in the NWT, a wildfire is threatening Edzo, one of the two communities that make up Betchikol. Right now, it's about 17 kilometers from the community. NWT Fire says the wildfire could impact Edzo within the next 12 to 48 hours, depending on weather and fire activity. The community is under an evacuation notice right now. That means people should have an emergency plan in place. The fire was caused by lightning on June 30th near Marion Lake Village. NWT Fire says the biggest concern right now is high winds from the north and west. 3 crews and 1 helicopter are working on the fire, along with support from an air tanker. Wildfires forced the Dene Nation to move its National Assembly this year. The Dene National Assembly was to be hosted in Fort Good Hope, but now it'll be in Deda. The election of the new national chief is a big item on the agenda. 6 people are running for the job. The election takes place on July 24th, and the assembly is July 23rd to 25th at the Chief Draghi Center in Deda. In the Yukon, lightning sparked dozens of new wildfires over the weekend, but officials in the territory are hopeful that a change in the weather will help firefighting efforts. Chris Windier has the latest.
Fire officials say as of this morning there are 78 active fires in the territory. That's up significantly from last week. And here are a couple of the major ones we're keeping an eye on. These 2 fires near Mayo at Rudolph Gulch and Roaring Fork. Combined, they're about 500 hectares in size. Not huge as far as fires go, but they're close enough to populated areas that there remains an evacuation alert in place for Mayo and Keno City. The other major fire is just north of Lake LaBarge. That one is at Wrong Lake, and this one is the big one. It's nearly 17,000 hectares. It's burning very close to the North Klondike Highway and had actually closed the road for a while because of smoke. The highway is open once again, but visibility is very poor. What's causing all these fires? In a word, lightning. We've had a lot of hot weather with heavy clouds. And here's what Mike Fancy with Wildland Fire Management had to say about that.
The number of fires that we've had so far in the season, they definitely put us right into the numbers that we've experienced over the last few years. But I think what makes the past 10 days so notable is how we've had so many fires in such a short period of time. It speaks to how lightning is the driving factor in wildfire activity in the territory.
There is some good news, though. Temperatures are down across the region today, and there's some rain falling in the area as well. And that has fire officials hoping they can get some of these fires under control or something like it over the next couple of days. Chris Windier, CBC News, Whitehorse.
A fire destroyed 2 Inuvik homes on Friday night, and 2 other homes were damaged. As the CBC's Des Lorraine reports, the community is stepping up to help the victims.
This is all that remains of the 2 homes lost to the flames. An intense and devastating fire that scorched nearby homes. Eyewitnesses say they would be gone too, but were saved by a local business owner who sprayed them down with his water trucks. Quick thinking and just the beginning of local support. The Inuvik Community Event Society started fundraising the very next day.
Right now our focus is on the 2 families that lost their homes, and we just thank everyone for their support, and to stay tuned to our Facebook page because we are going to be doing some other community events and fundraising.
Chalice says their hearts go out to the families whose homes have been damaged and encourage them to reach out if they need help. GoFundMe accounts have been made for the families involved. As of late this afternoon, $20,000 has been raised. One of the families I spoke with was grateful for the support from the community, but wasn't able to talk about it just yet. Des Lorraine, CBC News, Inuvik.
Yukon conservation officers say 1 person was injured in a bear attack over the weekend. It happened at the Pine Lake campground just outside Haines Junction. Conservation officers say a jogger and their dog came across a group of grizzly bears. The dog broke free, causing the bears to attack the person. Their name hasn't been released, but officials say they are recovering in hospital. Lee Carruthers was at the campground when the incident occurred.
We were sitting around in some friends' campsite fairly late in the evening. I think it may have been around 11. And I heard 4 shotgun shots. And it definitely sounded like a 12-gauge shotgun. Loud, not too far away.
Carruthers says conservation officers told campers to leave the park Monday morning. Yukon Conservation Officers Services says it euthanized 3 bears. Necropsies are being conducted on those bears to determine whether they're related. Officials are still looking for a 4th bear. A ban on heavy fuel oil in Arctic waters is now in effect. The International Maritime Organization proposed the ban 4 years ago because of environmental concerns. That's the global body that regulates shipping. As Samuel Watt reports, despite the ban, there is a grace period for some ships.
Opponents of heavy fuel oil have harsh words to describe it.
It's described as the bottom of the barrel, literally and figuratively. It's a waste product, and so it's a very sludge-like substance.
Heavy fuel oil, or HFO, is used in many ships because it's cheap, but it's dirty and nearly impossible to clean up if spilled.
We have seen the devastating impacts on the culture, the transfer of culture, on living and the death of many marine species.
There are exceptions to the HFO ban in the Arctic. Some vessels with protected fuel tanks have until 2029 to comply. CBC reached out to several companies whose ships crossed the region, though not all responded. Baffinland did, saying its entire fleet qualifies for that 5-year exemption. Same situation with Nunavut Sea Link and Supply, operated by Degagné Transarctic.
I think the Canadian government has to put in the framework, the regulatory framework, which compels these players to do it, because they're not doing it on their own.
He's also calling for measures to prevent the higher cost of cleaner fuels being passed on to consumers. David Rouvet, president of Degagne Transarctic, echoes those calls because as a business, he says it can't shoulder all the costs.
We have to remain as cost effective as possible, but also balance the environmental responsibility.
Transport Canada says it's continuing to engage with Inuit rights holders to prevent northern communities from paying a heavy price for heavy fuels. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Diavik Diamond Mine now has a massive solar plant. Rio Tinto says it's the biggest in the north. The plant has over 6,600 panels. It's expected to generate 4.2 million kilowatt hours of electricity per year. That's 25% of what's needed when Diavik enters closure work in 2 years. The GNWT says the plant will result in a huge reduction in emissions.
You promised me that you won't look back. There's gonna come a time you'll feel the darkness. You don't let them win.
How does someone just disappear? How can I be in love with something that was never there?
We are not a dying people. We are here and we are speaking.
I had a vision that I one day would be free again.
It is my right, it is my privilege, and it is my heritage.
Who's this then?
Inspector George Crabtree.
We'll just be needing one more thing.
Well, this is delightful.
So, you want to watch CBC News Explore, a new kind of news channel. Here's how to find us. We're on the CBC News app, on CBC Gem, and on your smart TV. Stream anytime. It's always free. CBC News Explore.
Sipping on a bit of Henny. Can I get a little Remy? Feeling heavy, chilling but I'm feeling ready. Pulled up in a big old Chevy. Dance floor stops and me gal damn drops. Queen with the locks and the crown on top. Feet in a box, never sound on pots. If it ain't the Henny, give me crown on rocks.
The Coast Guard invested Governor General Mary Simon as its honorary Chief Commissioner in a ceremony in St. John's, Newfoundland today. It's a symbolic role that's been given to the Governor General for nearly 50 years as a way to promote the Coast Guard's work in saving lives and protecting the environment. Simon is the first Inuk to hold the position.
It is my pleasure to host this morning's ceremony as Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Mary Simon, is invested as Honorary Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Coast Guard.
I received the honorary commissioner here today, which is I'm very honored to receive, and you know it's so important to support the Coast Guard, and they do such important work. So I'm very pleased about that.
This is the third time that we've had the honour in St. John's to host the Governor General and do an investiture into as the Honorary Chief Commissioner of the Coast Guard. So very special for the Coast Guard and very special for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians for sure, and all of Atlantic Canada for having the opportunity to host her.
The Coast Guard is a very humble organization, and we don't do a good job of selling ourselves. So having an ambassador from outside that recognizes the great work that we do and speak about it is only going to give us more visibility and also better appreciation for the work that all the Coast Guard members do from coast to coast to coast.
I am proud to assume this role, and I am proud to be here with you this morning. So thank you so much. Nakukmeik. Merci.
The Canadian military has quietly walked back on one of the more controversial changes to its relaxation of dress code regulations, hair grooming. Murray Brewster has the details in this exclusive report.
By traditional military standards, this is considered a bit scruffy.
I get to wear a pretty cool mustache now.
And that's why the military has moved to set some limits. It has amended its controversial grooming regulations, rules that were first relaxed in September 2022. The length of beards is now restricted to 2.5 centimeters, and hair for both men and women must be tied back away from the face and off the collar.
All right, bring it down there.
The relaxation of decades-old standards has been the subject of sometimes furious debate that has divided military members. This internal D&D survey, obtained by CBC News, shows just how deep the split runs when it comes to the overall relaxation of standards. Only about 33% feel as though the initial changes are good for the CAF. 44% do not. Members of the Army, non-commissioned members, and men are generally less supportive. However, women and members of the 2SLGBTQ+ community say it makes them proud to serve. When the relaxed rules first came into effect, the military was at the height of the sexual misconduct crisis. Important context for this researcher, who says that atmosphere contributed to cynicism among the troops.
It's quite hard to read those changes as outside of the political and social context where they happened, which was the sexual misconduct crisis and questioning of the military's equity, diversity, and inclusion record.
But a former senior commander disagrees, saying the changes were first discussed as far back as 2016 and intended to reflect the new overall face of Canadian society.
The Canadian Forces is still getting a sense of who it is culturally.
The argument against the relaxed standards, most often, is that it takes away from combat effectiveness. However, there is nothing in the research to back that up.
This has made some profoundly uncomfortable, based on the generation they come from. Others from a newer generation are completely at ease with it.
Most of Canada's allies ended this grooming debate several years ago. Many allow beards as long as they're trimmed. Hair is a different story, though. Most allied nations insist their troops be as clean-cut as possible. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Nunavut has a new health research support centre. It's aimed at improving health care for Inuit communities in the territory. It's called the Spore Support Unit. The research unit is based out of the Kawyaktit Health Research Centre. Gwen Healy-Akiahuk is the executive and scientific director of the centre. She says the research will be informed by Inuit and will work to improve healthcare policy. And there's a number of things the research will look into.
Yeah, like how we deliver healthcare, what types of services are available, what types of services are needed, what evidence supports different treatments or practices within the healthcare system. Like there's really a lot that's possible.
In the first couple of years, the unit will focus on studies to improve healthcare for youth and children. The total cost of the unit is $9.6 million, spread out over the next 5 years. The renaming of Great Slave Lake in the NWT is still on the table. That's despite no suggestions coming from local Indigenous governments so far. The Northwest Territories government received a request to rename the lake back in March of 2022. It says it decided Indigenous governments need to play a big role if that were to happen, so it reached out looking for input.
That is where the department is still at today, is waiting for information from each of those Indigenous governments, what traditional place names they'd like to see. We can't really put a timeline on because we need to ensure that it is not the government that it is in the driver's seat of this one.
CBC News reached out to the Yellowknives Dene First Nation chiefs to find out about any ongoing discussions, but they weren't available for comment. Cleveland says they're still in the early stages and it may take a while for a name change to happen. For the month of June, we shared stories from our colleagues at CBC Indigenous about Inuit, Métis, and First Nations trailblazers. The month may be over, but we have one more incredible person to highlight. Louis Sock-Alexis was the first Indigenous person to appear on a Major League Baseball roster. And even though it happened over a century ago, Indigenous people are still breaking through barriers on the diamond. Brian Enesis has more.
For the North End legends from Winnipeg, baseball is a family affair. Corey Raven's grandfather founded the North End Legends decades ago. Now, he manages the team that features relatives who live in the city. And it's an important way for Corey to stay connected to the man who inspired his love of the diamond.
It makes me proud, just knowing my grandfather's up there watching us, still playing ball. I'm a little older now these days, but I still try and still play, and I actually get to enjoy my kids playing ball. And seeing my team playing ball every time we hit the field is just great feeling.
But Indigenous people's history in baseball stretches back a long time.
Break as Gene hits third with a spectacular slide.
Way back in 1947, Jackie Robinson broke Major League Baseball's color barrier when he became the first black man to play professional baseball for the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Robinson with the run that beats the Yanks.
I would just like to say that I was really just a spoke in the wheel of the success that we had some 25 years ago.
But another spoke in the wheel of success is Louis Sokolexis, who actually debuted about 50 years before Robinson did. He was from the Penobscot Indian tribe in Maine, and all accounts published in the newspapers of the day show Sokolexis was a heck of a baseball player, even before he went pro. A newspaper clipping from the Boston Post-Sun recounted one game from the summer of 1895, when Sokolexis chased after a line drive that was hit into left field. The ball hit the ground so far from home plate, it would have been an easy home run for the Harvard team, if Sokolexis wasn't the player chasing the ball down. Roughly 2 years later, Sokolexis was approached by the ownership of the Cleveland Spiders, and he signed a major league contract. His rookie season saw the most success. He hit .338 with 3 home runs and 9 triples, while stealing 16 bases over just 66 games.
2-2 to Daniels. Strike 3 call.
But over 125 years after Sokolexis' debut, Indigenous baseball players are still breaking through barriers. In 2023, Caleb Thomas from Six Nations was the first Indigenous player named to Baseball Canada's junior national roster.
1-2 pitch here. Check swing, and
Thomas says he wants to pitch in the major leagues one day. He's currently playing for the NCAA Division I Missouri State Bears.
My involvement with baseball started ever since I could walk. It's been like my whole life, and I've used it as a platform to like be a role model for the younger generation and use it like to motivate just other kids to play any sports, whether that be baseball, lacrosse, whatever it may be. I've kind of just used my platform to just promote healthy being and just being active and following dreams.
One thing that Thomas says he's learned in his years playing baseball, the amount of Indigenous talent that exists in the game today.
I didn't realize there were so many like talented other Indigenous baseball players who deserve the chance to be looked at and recognized. And I just think baseball is growing more and more each year in the Indigenous communities, and I think it's like wonderful to see that. I know like hockey and lacrosse are the biggest sports, but I think it's just great to see there's people expanding their horizons and trying other sports and hopefully making a name for themselves one day.
A list created by Baseball Almanac, which compiles baseball stats, facts, and history, shows just 52 Native Americans played in the major leagues, including Sokolexis. But like Thomas, more are trying to get there. Winnipeg's Bryce Raven from Broken Head Ojibwe Nation in Manitoba is one of them. He participated in the most recent North American Indigenous Games with Team Manitoba and brought back the gold medal in the under-19 category. Bryce knows one of his favorite players, former Boston Red Sox and New York Yankee Jacoby Ellsbury, identifies as Native American. Bryce and Ellsbury are both natural left-handers, and Bryce says he hopes to one day play in the major leagues like Ellsbury did.
I want to go to college somewhere. I hope when I go back to juniors and after this season, I hope to get offers as far as it takes me. Like if it's done after college, then just come back and play with family again.
Bryce says he thinks a good way for the game to grow among Indigenous people is seeing more events like training camps hosted on reserve or in Indigenous communities.
3 cheers.
For Bryce, baseball is a passion with potential to be so much more, if he's willing to put the work into it.
It's a great feeling, and it's something that he needs to do is kind of break away from the family team, North End Legends, which is something he needs to do. Get back into school, get back into the college and start playing hardball again and get away from this game right now and back into the AAA hardball and college ball. And it's it's kind of a good feeling, but a little sad because he's got to go away.
Corey says he's sad he may not play baseball with his son anymore on the North End Legends, but he's happy to see him become a legend in his own right, alongside other Indigenous trailblazers like Sauk Alexis. Brian Enius, CBC Indigenous, Winnipeg.
Thank you to Brian Enius for that piece. And a big must-see to all of our colleagues at CBC Indigenous for putting together such amazing stories for Indigenous History Month. We've really enjoyed having the pieces on our show. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. We leave you with a look at what Yellowknifers did on Canada Day. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
Would you like a sticker or a pencil? Yes. There's a sticker and a pencil. Thank you.
Well, shout out to all the participants and volunteers. Without them, we don't have a parade. And shout out to all Yellowknife for coming out and turning out.
All right, yeah, we got our big farmer's sausage here, our kids' hot dog, our little Bavarian for Canada Day here.
And we have face painting for kids, we have toys for kids, so they come and celebrate and be prepared for the parade, and after the parade with other celebrations. Make face paint for your kids, for the grandkids, enjoy the drinks and the soft ice cream, and then enjoy Canada Day parade, and also enjoy the events happening today. Thank you everyone, and happy Canada Day.
Are you ready to be entertained?
Stand-up comedy, best comedians from across the globe.
Oh, great.
An incredible lineup.
Canada.
Are you ready?
Oh.
Are you kidding me?
CBC's got the best in stand-up comedy.
That's pretty unbelievable, man.
It's a scam. It's a scam.
No f***ing way.
Ooh, it's a bit spicy.
It'll change your life.
Catch it all free on CBC Gem.
Well done. Y'all give it up. Give it up. Give it up.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes.
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
I did not know what my future would look like.
The industry wasn't set up for me to thrive in.
I didn't realize how formative 25 to 30 would be.
I was so excited when they said I got to do an interview with you.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
You promised me that you won't look back.
You don't let them win.
I had a vision that I one day would be free again.
We are not a dying people. We are here and we are speaking.